Okay, I am in my car. I apologize for the background noise. I am trying to get this word recorded. The Lord gave me this word while I was at work today, and I am driving home from work right now. So I am trying to get this recorded because I'm afraid if I don't do it right now that I'm not going to get to it tonight. So do what we can, right? Okay, so the Lord gave me a word about perseverance today. I am a very passive person in some aspects. Maybe in most aspects, I'm pretty passive. And there are many, many verses in the Bible that talk about perseverance and how we are supposed to persevere through trials and tribulations. And a lot of these verses talk about endurance and they talk about patience. But the Lord wanted to separate perseverance out today and talk a little bit about the difference between endurance and perseverance. So whenever I hear like the Bible verses that talk about perseverance, because I am more of a passive person, my mind automatically goes to those passive synonyms like endure or hold on or be patient or wait, right? Like these are words that I'm sure some of you kind of see it the same way. These are words that come up whenever you hear perseverance. But the Lord wanted me to talk a little bit more about the active aspect of perseverance. You know, there is a passive aspect of enduring and waiting. That is persevering. But there's also an active aspect of pushing forward and knocking down walls and speaking up, right? So he told me to look up the definition of perseverance, and it says to continue in a course of action even in the face of difficulty with little or no prospect of success. Okay, so perseverance. You see very little prospect of success. You see maybe no prospect of success, but you push forward anyway, right? It says in a course of action. To continue in a course of action, even in the face of difficulty, with little or no prospect of success. Why does he ask us to persevere in this way? Especially when there's like probability of slim to none of success. It's because he wants us to rely on his strength. He wants us to rely on his strength. But he wants us to be active in this process, right? And not just sit back and say, hey, I'm going to wait for God to do this because he's able to and I'm not able to. And so I'm just going to wait and do nothing and just wait and endure. And even though all this hard stuff is happening, I'm just going to endure through it, have faith and endure through it, and wait on God. Listen, brothers and sisters, okay? There is a time for that. There's definitely a time when we need to just wait, when we need to not do anything, and we just need to wait on God, right? But, so yes, there is a time for that. And sometimes he will ask you to just wait and do nothing and endure while having faith, right? But there's also a time where he wants us to pick up our swords and fight. He wants us to use the tools that he has given us and take action. He has not grown us up in our faith so that we can remain babies, still needing him to do everything for us. We are to rely on him for everything. Yes, we are to rely on him for everything. But he trains us, and he gives us authority, and he gives us tools, and he gives us these things so that we are able to stand up and take action and do the things we need to do to get things done for his kingdom. It's not always about waiting. It's not always about just patient endurance. Sometimes it's about standing up and fighting and speaking up and being your own advocate to get things done. Because other people are not going to be your advocate. God may send an advocate your way every once in a while, but in general, other people are looking out for themselves, right? And you know, the Lord has showed me this. I think my mom once told me a long time ago. I was having I don't even remember what it was, but it was some kind of problem with healthcare and my doctor or something, and I just wasn't getting the help that I needed, right? And she had told me, Andrea, you have to be your own advocate. You have to be your own advocate. She tells me the same thing when it comes to my kids. You have to be their advocate. You have to speak up, right? So sometimes it requires us to speak up and not just go with the flow and think that whatever's happening is in the will of God. Like, okay, this situation stinks right now, but it's in God's plan. You know, not everything that happens is in God's plan. Now, the Lord does tell us that we are, for those who love him, he will work things out for our good. He does promise that. But not everything that happens in this world is in his plan, because this world is evil. It is run by an evil prince of this world, Satan, right? And Satan is going to do everything he can to put roadblocks in front of you and to make you give up. So you have to stand up and be your own advocate. And Satan doesn't just put roadblocks in the spirit. He does it in the spirit and in the natural. God has given us tools and he's given us authority, and he's done this so that we can to advocate for ourselves, to pick up our sword and fight when we need to. And that is the active aspect of perseverance. He led me to Hebrews 10:36. And I'm going to read from the NIV version. I don't usually use this version, but I'm going to read from this version today. It says, you need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised. In the King James, it says, you need to have patience. In the New King James, it says endurance. In the NASB and the ESV, it says endurance. But he specifically sent me to the NIV because it says you need to persevere. And he showed me the difference between this. He said, look at what the verse says. It's talking about taking action. It's talking about when you have done the will of God. Okay? Now, sometimes the will of God is to wait. But sometimes the will of God is to get the thing done. Right? To get it done. Whatever it is. To get from point A to point B. And Satan sees this, okay? So Satan will put up roadblocks because he's banking on the fact that maybe you're just going to wait it out. And you're going to wait and wait and wait for these roadblocks to come down and eventually give up because they don't come down, when God is waiting for you to stand up, to speak up, to knock those roadblocks down, to knock the walls down. Okay, so he gave me a great example in the Bible, and he talked about Daniel. And if you go read Daniel chapter 1 and Daniel chapter 2. These are two different examples of when Daniel could have kept his mouth shut and went with the flow and just endured. But he didn't. He chose to speak up, and he chose to fight back, okay? And in one case, he saved himself from defiling himself with the king's food. And in the other case, he saved a whole bunch of other people from getting killed because he didn't sit back and patiently endure. He stood up and spoke out. I encourage you to go read Daniel 1 and Daniel 2. Daniel 1 talks about when the king had ordered the men to eat the choice food and wine, and Daniel didn't want to defile himself with that food, so he spoke up and he asked if he could eat vegetables instead. You know, it doesn't seem like a big deal to us, but that was a big deal. Like, heads could have rolled, okay? But he spoke up. And because he did that, the situation ended with him being chosen to be in the personal service of the king. Which would have never happened if Daniel would have just gone with the flow, said, hey, I don't want to eat this food, but I'm going to endure through it. God will help me. I'm going to endure through it. Instead, he decided to fight back and say, hey, no, I want to eat the vegetables. Let me eat the vegetables, you know? And it ended up where he was in the service of the personal service of the king at the end. Daniel chapter 2 talks about the wise men, the king's wise men not being able to interpret the king's dream. And it made the king very, very angry. And so the king gave an order to kill all of the wise men, okay? But Daniel, he spoke up. He spoke up and he said, look, wait, before you do that, wait. Let me try. Let me try. With the Lord's help, I will interpret your dream, right? I'm paraphrasing, okay? I'm not reading it. I'm paraphrasing because I'm driving. But he spoke up. And with the Lord's help, he was able to not only interpret the dream, but actually tell the king what his dream was. And he saved a bunch of people. And once again, he set himself apart in the eyes of the king. And became, he became, the word says he became one of his advisors or something like that. Okay, because of the wisdom that God had given Daniel. But that wouldn't have happened, and all of those wise men would have been killed if Daniel hadn't advocated, okay? If he wouldn't have spoke up, if he would have just sat back and had patient endurance, it would not have ended that way. God gave me these two examples because sometimes we need to advocate for ourselves and sometimes we need to advocate for others. When you read about perseverance in the Bible, read it from an active point of view. What tools can I use that God has given me to get me from point A to point B? This could be, this is something that he wants us to learn not only on a spiritual level, not just for our spiritual lives, but for our natural lives too. Because this world is going to have lots of roadblocks, right? And if you sit back and you say, hey, I'm just going to wait it out, God will take care of it. Yeah, sometimes he'll take care of it. But sometimes he wants us to utilize the tools that he has given us and step into our authority that he has given us and not act like little spiritual babies needing him to do everything for us when he has given us the authority in the spirit to get things done for his kingdom and for our natural lives, okay? Sometimes it takes that extra phone call. Sometimes it takes that hard conversation you have to have with somebody. Whatever it may be. The Lord wants us to learn how to be our own advocate and learn how to utilize our authority in our spiritual walk with him and in our natural lives, day-to-day lives. He's walking by our side through it all. He is helping us through it all. We still have to depend on him, his wisdom and his strength and the tools that he gives us to get these things done. We still have to rely on him. But we need to learn how to get some of these things done and utilize the things that he has given us. Perseverance. Active perseverance. I love you.